Hey guys, welcome back. So this is the third tutorial video of our series. And in this one, we'll be looking at how we can support research in a slightly different way to funding specific projects. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so we have some slides as usual, just to give you the concept, and then we'll go back to the web platform and see how we can do this in practice. So this video will be focusing on how we can support specific works of research. And by specific works, I mean papers, so research articles that have been uploaded to the platform. Okay, so how do papers work on Fouter? Right, so what happens is, well, in general, researchers do their research. So if it's theoretical, you write a bunch of stuff on the blackboard, and then you take some of that stuff and you put it into a paper. So again, you spend hours just typing up this paper and distilling all these ideas and all this science that you've come up with and putting it into one place in a very succinct package. And so you write this research paper, that's great. You maybe submit it to a journal, and you have it published. But then you can also go to Fouter and you can upload this paper to the website. So you upload the paper to Fouter. Okay, so what happens then? Why would you do this? So once you've uploaded the paper, you can ask again for a number of shares of that paper and a respective price per share. And what happens is that people on the platform, members of the public or other researchers, they can take a look at your paper and say, oh, that's really interesting stuff. I like this research, I'm going to buy a share of this paper. And by buying shares of that paper, you generate some money for the researcher or researchers. So you have these Fouters, they buy shares, you generate some money. So maybe that was a bit ambiguous. How does this actually work? So again, we have a little worked example for you to see how it works in practice. So I'm a fan of Stranger Things, so I'm going to take this as an example. So we have Dustin Henderson here. And let's say he's written a research article and he wants to get some money for this research article. So he publishes it and then he uploads it to Fouter. So he generates some shares and he uploads his article. The name of the article is Stable, Einstein, Rosen, Bridges. He says, I want 100 shares to be generated at 1 coin per share. So the value of this paper that he's uploaded will be 100 coins. So in this example, we'll also be keeping track of Dustin's coins. So when he uploads this paper, his 10% of the paper's value, so in this case, 10 coins, are converted from his flex coins to non-flex coins. So remember before we said there's a conversion between flex and non-flex sometimes. So this is one of the ways where flex is converted into non-flex. When you upload a paper, you secure in 10% of that value into Fouter. Okay, so now he has this paper up on Fouter, and you can have people like John again, so a Fouter of research, come and look at the research and say, oh, that's really interesting. I want to buy shares of that paper. So let's say John buys 20 shares. So 20 shares at 1 coin per share is 20 coins. But John also has to pay 15% extra on top of those 20 coins. And we'll see where that 15% goes. So it's split into 5, 5, and 5. So there are 3 places where this 15% goes. 5% goes back to the Fouters. So in this case, John is the only Fouter. So he gets 5% of 20 coins, which is 1 coin. So John gains, we'll say gains, but I mean, he's refunded 1 coin for buying 20 shares. The platform, again, takes a fee. So we take a 1 coin fee, or 5% of what John bought. But Dustin gets some reward for all this. So he gets 5% in flex coins. So this is the third 5% we see here on the right. It goes into Dustin's flex coins. But Dustin also generates non-flex coins from the sale of shares. So he gets 20 non-flex coins, which was the cost of the original shares that John bought. Okay, so that's great. That's one person buying 20 shares. How does this happen? Well, what happens if more people buy more shares? So let's take a second person, so Jessica, and Jessica comes and buys 40 shares now. So again, Jessica has to pay 40 coins for the share value, but also 15% fees. So 5% go to the founders, but now this 5% is split between John and Jessica. And the way it is split is it's a proportion of the number of shares they hold relative to the total number of shares sold. So in this case, 60 shares have been sold between John and Jessica. John owns 20 of those of those 60 shares, and Jessica owns the other 40. So Jessica gets 1.33 coins refunded. Well, so I did this a bit in reverse, but John is also going to get some reimbursement. 5% goes to Fowler again. So in this case, it was 2 coins. So that's 5% of 40 coins. Dustin, again, gets recompensated for having uploaded this research and having shares sold. So in this case, he gets 5% of the 40 coins sold as flex coins, but he also gets 40 non-flex coins, which are the original price of the share. And then the founders also get refunded, like I said first. Sorry, I'm skipping a bit. So Jessica got 1.33 refunded, and John gets 0.66, which is 1/3 of the total value of the share. So 1/3 of 5% of 40. Okay, so this is, yeah, maybe you have to do the math slowly. Maybe you have to replay this a bit, but it's really just splitting that 5% between the two founders that are currently on the paper. And let's say we have a third founder, just to complicate things further. So the third founder buys the rest of the shares. So he buys the 40 remaining shares. Again, 40 coins plus 15% fee, which is an additional 6 coins. That is split between the system. So the system or the nonprofit gets 2 coins, which will go towards, again, banking fees and running costs. Dustin will again get his 2 plus 40. And the founders will all get a respective amount of the 5%. So in this case, we have 5% of 40 split between 3 founders, and 2 of them own 40 shares out of 100. So they get that proportion of the 5%. And one of them owns 20 shares out of 100. So they get the remaining 20%. Okay, so hopefully if you replay that a few times, the maths make sense. In a future edition of Fouter, we'll also be opening up a marketplace, so where founders can buy and sell shares from each other. And every time they buy and sell shares from each other, the same thing happens. So there's 5% goes to all the founders, 5% of the number of shares sold goes to the system, and 5% of these shares goes to the authors. One final remark is that in this case, Dustin was the only author of this paper. And generally in science, you have many authors on a paper. Sometimes you can have hundreds. And so in this case, all the revenue generated by the sale of shares is split between the authors. And the way it is split, it depends on how much work each author has done on the paper or on the research work. Oh, okay, that's a lot. Maybe you'll have to replay this 1 or 2 more times to really get the gist of it and follow the maths. But hopefully what will help is actually going to the platform and seeing how this works in practice.